Hello world, welcome back to Ray's RC. Got another review video for you today, talking about the TLR 22T 4.0. So this is a two-wheel drive stadium truck from TLR. It's been out for about 6 months or so, and I thought I'd do a review of this truck. So now I actually had a 2.0 and a 3.0, and then when the 4.0 came out about 5 or 6 months ago, I did not buy one, but what I did instead was decide to basically convert my 3.0 into a 4.0. So that's what we got here, basically my 3.0 upgrade up to 4.0 spec. It's pretty much exactly the same as a 4.0. Except for the transmission. I'm running the 3.0 laydown transmission here rather than the 4.0 transmission, but they're exactly the same transmission, just this one doesn't have adjustable diff height. So they are the same truck, running the same body, everything. So this is pretty much a 4.0 TLR. So yeah, I've owned several of these trucks, obviously the 2.0, 3.0, and 4.0. So feel like I'm pretty well versed in this line of trucks. Been pretty happy running them overall, and so thought I'd give you my thoughts. So first of all, wanted to go through a bunch of different categories. Gonna rate this truck in a bunch of different areas from 1 to 10, 10 being basically perfect, 5 being average. Doesn't mean it's bad, it just means it's average among its peers, and 1 obviously being just really bad. So the first thing I want to talk about was the build, and obviously I did a 3.0 build, but been converting it over to 4.0 spec. Have actually a build series on that conversion, so you can check that out if you want. But yeah, overall the build is really good. TLR builds in general are generally pretty good. You know, they come with parts and parts bags rather than parts trees, so you don't have to cut anything off the parts trees. The bodies are pre-cut, the wings are pre-cut. Everything is nice and really straightforward build. Manuals tend to be quite good, so I'm going to give the build a 9 out of 10. There's only a couple little things I don't quite like about the TLRs. You know, just kind of the way the belt cranks kind of fit together, and screws coming from the bottom, and it's kind of hard to hold down the belt cranks. You know, little things like that irked me a little bit. You know, the stiff as L parts are obviously really hard to get screws into because they're super stiff, and you know, it is possible to strip the hexes on some of the screws on the heads and stuff. But overall, yeah, the build is really good. I'm going to give it a 9 out of 10, and you know, overall, I do enjoy building TLR kits. So next category I want to talk about is the design. And so some of the changes they did from the 3.0 to 4.0 pretty much were mostly in the rear end. So the chassis is a little bit longer. I think it's 1.75 millimeters longer. Obviously comes out with a 3-gear laydown transmission now. The 3.0 had a stand-up 3-gear. It's got adjustable diff height, so you know that really allows you to run on carpet, AstroTurf a little bit better rather than just dirt. Stiff as L parts, you know, pretty much all the way around. The mud guards, the arms, the shock towers and stuff, they're all stiff as L now. So definitely, you know, I guess more planted, sort of better feel on the track. They also revised the rear end. So basically they're running shorter shocks on the back, different shock towers. You can mount the shocks on the front or the rear of the arms. And they also revised the camber block. So yeah, most of the changes were in the rear end. So that's kind of why I decided to convert my 3.0 to 4.0. It just sort of made financial sense to me, because overall it was kind of more cost effective to do that. But the design is quite good. Obviously there are more adjustments. Obviously with the forward mounted shocks you can basically have more tuning options. It's better suited for high traction surfaces like carpet and AstroTurf. That's, I think, kind of the design goals. The other things I noticed basically is they try to remove some of the weight from the rear end and kind of move it centralized a little bit more, you know, sort of make the chassis a little bit longer to make the truck more stable. So yeah, the design is quite good. Now obviously the Team Associated T6.1 got released a few weeks ago. I have not driven one of those yet, but I am quite familiar with the B6.1 and SC6.1. So I would say the design, you know, probably from an adjustment standpoint, maybe not quite as good as Team Associated. You know, you kind of see the different philosophies. TLR kind of tests and tunes and then comes up with a design that they think works really well. Team Associated, on the other hand, I kind of feel like they add as many adjustments as possible to their kits so that you can tune it to the way you want it to drive. So a little bit different philosophy. I do prefer the Team Associated style because I feel like you get more adjustments, can kind of dial it in a little bit better. So I'm going to give the design of this platform a 7 out of 10. Just not quite as many adjustments and tuning options, I think, as some of the other kits that are out there today, but still very good overall. So next category I want to talk about is performance and kind of brief history on the TLR trucks I've owned. The 2.0 was pretty good. Really the area I felt it was lacking was really not enough steering throw. Corner entry, mid-corner steering was a little bit lacking. A lot, I think, due to basically there was just not enough steering throw on the truck. So they fixed that with the 3.0. The 3.0 had a lot of steering, with the adjustable arm lengths, the VLA system, that allowed you to dial even more steering, with these sort of steering blocks here on the spindles, you could, dial even more steering. So there's a lot of steering that they built into the 3.0, but it was always kind of, I'd say on a knife's edge. You're always kind of riding the line between steering and instability, right? You could dial in steering, but the truck might be a bit unstable. So with the 4.0, I feel like they've really corrected that. I feel like this platform is super stable, yet still has a lot of steering. So part of that, I'm sure is due to the longer chassis. They also reduced kind of the weight in the rear end, made not so much weight up high, so the truck wouldn't pitch back and forth quite so much. That was one problem with the 3.0. It tend to kind of slam the rear end off of jumps and stuff, so kind of tend to wheelie as well. So they did fix that, and so what performance-wise I've seen is this truck is really, really easy to drive. I mean, I feel like the tuning window is also much larger, meaning if you get a setup, halfway close, it'll drive pretty well, and then you're just dialing in fine increments. Whereas with the 3.0, you had a really small tuning window, and it's hard to get it like driving perfectly. And overall, I feel like this is a much more forgiving truck to drive, yet still has the steering, traction, everything else that you're looking for. So performance, actually, I'm going to give this a 10 out of 10. This thing drives amazing. I have not driven the T6.1, but it's hard for me to imagine that it drives any better than this truck. I really like the way this truck drives. I think anybody that throws it down is going to have a good time with it and find it a very high performing truck. So I'm going to give it a 10 out of 10. I think the performance on thing is amazing. So that's my rating there. Next area I want to talk about is durability, and this truck does have a few weaknesses. One of the things a lot of people complain about are the ball cups. So they kind of went to this open ball cup style, a couple generations ago, and it makes getting a hex wrench onto these ball steads a lot easier. But the problem is there's just not quite as much material holding them onto the ball stead, so they do tend to pop off a little bit more than before. Now they've gone through a couple revisions of these things, so they are better than before, but overall, I would have to say I probably have more problems with ball cups on this truck than any other vehicle. There are a couple things to keep in mind. One, if they were popping off a lot, make sure they're not damaged, because once you kind of damage the underside of one of these ball cups, they're going to just tend to pop off quite easily again and again. Second thing I want to mention is that basically, thanks to my buddy Matt who knows this, but check your ball cups through the full range of motion, right? If you're finding at extreme angles that, there's not any play in the ball cups at all, that means they're sort of already have force being applied to them at the extreme angles, and maybe that's partly why they may be popping off. So definitely check that. I did find certain combinations of basically VLA and ball stead washers and stuff like that you may actually find spots where they are too tight and have stress applied to them. So that's the second thing to check for. And the last thing I'd say is basically you can try the closed older style ball cups. Those definitely stay on a little bit better than these newer ones. And if you're having problems, definitely look into that. The other thing durability wise I would say is basically the 3.0 and 4.0 have these inserts here on the spindle. So basically this is a just trail, 2, 3, or 4 millimeter trail. These plastic inserts definitely can break. They make aluminum versions, which pretty much means that they acknowledge that is a problem. I've broken one. Definitely other people have broken some, but I wouldn't say it's a major problem, but definitely is one of the weak spots on this truck. And the last thing is, in general, this truck has very long turnbuckles. So if you're smashing into things, yeah, I have probably bent more turnbuckles on this truck than any other kit. So overall durability, I think is probably not quite as good as the competition. So we're talking about like the X-Ray, the associated kits. Durability, I think, is kind of about average. It's not as fragile as the Kyosho's, but probably not as durable as some of the other brands out there. So I'm going to rate it a 5 out of 10. Next category I want to talk about is value. And from a value perspective, this kit costs $309. The Team Associated is $329. The X-Ray is obviously, I think, over $400. It's quite expensive. Kyosho, which you really won't want to buy, is also more than this kit. So from a value perspective, this is pretty much the cheapest truck out there. It also comes with a lot of value in the box, a lot of aluminum pieces, basically. Just kind of go through it. So aluminum C&D blocks, fully aluminum shocks, including the caps. You got sort of these aluminum capped rear hubs, aluminum rear hexes. So yeah, overall, you know, a lot of value, I think, in the box. Obviously, also the body is pre-cut, the wing is pre-cut. Parts do not come on parts trees, so they're already pre-cut off of the parts trees for you. So a ton of value, I think, in the box. Aluminum rear camber block. Just overall, a really nice kit. So I'm going to give the value actually a 9 out of 10. You know, there's no carbon fiber shock towers. You know, I think value-wise, it's quite good, and overall, you know, I'm quite pleased with it. So next area is support, and I rated the TLR 22T 3.0 an 8 out of 10 in support. I kind of feel like TLRs maybe cut down on their you know, team drivers, or basically the amount of money they're spending on personnel, so maybe not quite as much support as they've had in the past. So I'm going to drop that rating down a little bit to 7. The TLR 22T in particular does not tend to have a whole lot of setup sheets. I am actually running something close to the Frank Root Stock Nationals 4.0 setup, and it's working really, really well, so I definitely encourage you to look at that. But stadium trucks in general obviously are not as popular as buggies and other classes, so I'm going to give the support rating a 7 out of 10. So anything I dislike about this truck, still not a fan of the slipper system. You know, I'm running the Shell / Avid slipper style. I wish there were a few more adjustments, right? The diff height, you've got +3 or standard, you know, whereas the Team Associate stuff has, you know, basically 0, +1, +2, +3. It is nice to see that they obviously include some of the more modern features, like being able to run shocks on the front of the arms. Although on this truck, I found that it just was not quite stable enough for me, not enough rear traction, so I'm still running on the rear end. But it's nice to see that they're doing things like that. So overall, those are probably the only real gripes. The other thing is, you know, I'm just not a fan of these bell cranks. Just kind of the way the screws mount. You know, the screws that are underneath here in the bottom do tend to kind of back out because they're sort of threaded in these metal posts here, but it's hard to like hold down the posts and try to get them back in at the same time with a little bit of Loctite. So little things like that, I'm not a big fan of, but overall it's a really nice truck, a lot of adjustments, and so overall, you know, I'm quite happy with it. So what's my conclusion? I think this thing drives amazing. I mean, it's got tons of steering. You can always add steering to it with basically the VLA system, the caster blocks, I'm sorry, spindles and stuff. So a ton of steering in the truck, plus a lot of stability and rear traction. So I'm finding the truck just performs really awesome. It's just a great truck, really happy with it overall. Definitely was thinking about buying a T6.1, but after I basically converted this up to 4.0 spec, I really see no reason to buy a T6.1, so very happy overall. So anyways, that's my review of the TLR 22T 4.0. Thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe to my channel as always, and look for more videos soon. Thanks.